Next up, this next speaker first experienced the magic of Fenway Park in the summer of 1975. And that was when his father took him to his first baseball game. And I think if you're raised in Boston or New England and you've been to Fenway Park for your first time, it's really a cathedral experience. Well, anyways, he earned a Thomas J. Watson Fellowship and studied global baseball culture in Japan, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, and Nicaragua. And he recently published a popular book, Cape Encounters, which is contemporary Cape Cod ghost stories, and he's got it on his table, and tonight's lecture entitled Haunted Baseball, which is typical here for Boston, which is the heartland of baseball fans. Please welcome Dan Gordon. Go, Dan. And we get some haunted baseball going on in Tampa tonight, it seems. Again, folks, this is our final speaker for tonight. And we appreciate you staying with us for this 2008 Monster Mash. Reminder that we are coming back next year, October 17th, 2009 as well. Folks, we had people come here tonight, just so you know, from San Antonio, Texas, but we had New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and the 6 states of New England, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. So we had a nice blend. And it's a shame there aren't more conferences like this throughout the United States, because I think it's a good interaction, town hall type feeling, and relationships are begun, and in my case sometimes ended, but as people interact with each other, and it's a great thing to actually reach out and touch the internet characters that you've read, you've gone to their websites, you've read all of their material, and to meet them in person in this digital age of distance. And again, we're trying to hook up the program here. But Haunted Baseball, my brother Jeff just recently left the Boston Herald after writing about Major League Baseball for 20 years covering the Red Sox. He had enough of what Jeff Belanger would call them assholes. Packed up his wife and his child and drove out to Milwaukee. But Jeff came up with a story, and it's linked off the Monster Mash website. And I think Dan's going to refer to it. In 2003, when the Boston Red Sox were down and staying in St. Petersburg playing the Tampa Bay Rays. Am I ruining your thunder with that story with the Scott Williamson? Oh, okay. So apparently Scott Williamson, a hard-throwing right-handed reliever that Grady Little should have gone to in the 2003 American League Championship Series, encountered a ghost. And other players on the Boston Red Sox going to this hotel in St. Petersburg. Do you know the name of that? Vinoy Hotel, that's it, okay. Renaissance Vinoy Hotel had experienced entities and seeing men in 19th century garb. It's an old... So if you go around the league in baseball, it seems that a lot of teams do have legend and ghosts stories associated with them, especially with some of the old ballparks. I know that I was researching rock and roll ghosts, and I don't know if Nick Redfern knew about this, but the ghost of Keith Moon apparently was seen by a few people. They claimed at the Glastonbury concert about 7 or 8 years ago, 2001 or 2002, people swear that they saw him sitting up on a bank of speakers. Yeah, Nick says, yeah, right, sure. But anyways, ghosts have been in our culture for quite some time. And does anybody know a joke? Because I finished my segue. You ready? Okay, thank you. Dan Gordon, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry about that. It's a human rain delay there. I wanted to, of course, Lauren had surveyed the audience earlier about, where people are from and everything. I was wondering how many people are Red Sox fans, or it's a lot. Yeah. How many are rooting against the Sox tonight? And, and how many people could care less about baseball? Okay. Okay, so it's a rough crowd tonight. A lot of cat calls. It's kind of ironic to be speaking in Watertown for me, because 20 years ago I actually joined a writers group here in Watertown, and I've been coming here quite regularly, and met the person who organized the group. He used to work at Houghton Mifflin, and several years into the group, I learned that he was the editor of. He had suggested the writing of the book Shoeless Joe to W.P. Kinsella, and actually became the movie Field of Dreams. And that was for me like amazing, because I was such a huge fan of that movie, and then ironically down the road I actually started writing about baseball ghosts. But it's just kind of fun to be speaking in Watertown. Well, to start, let's mention that the Japanese. I've done a lot of writing on Japanese baseball, and the Japanese believe there exists a spiritual force in baseball, and it's called Mamono. Mamono is considered, it's a force that occurs in the late innings of games and leads to amazing comebacks by teams of destiny. And after, my wife's Japanese, and after the game on Thursday, we were on the internet, and we started reading some of the Japanese media reports, and they were talking about it at Fenway Park, and just wondering if maybe tonight it might occur in Tampa for either team, but it'll be kind of interesting. It's just interesting that spirituality and the idea of ghosts and spirit forces isn't just in American baseball, but all over the world. But I became interested in it. I wrote a book called Cape Encounters. Sorry about that, I'm technically challenged tonight. And basically, in the writing of the book, I interviewed a lot of people in the old sea captains' homes and old salt works and other amazing buildings. A lot of history, of course. Cape Cod has a tremendous history, and I've been a huge baseball fan my whole life. And my dad threatened to send me to baseball rehab actually when I was a teenager. Because I couldn't get away from the TV set. At the time I didn't realize there wasn't such a thing, and I was quite terrified. As John mentioned, actually after college I got a grant, and I actually traveled around the world and studied baseball, interviewed players in Japan and Latin America, and been writing on it for many years. And so I started wondering if there wasn't a connection between baseball and ghosts. And baseball has so much history to it. There's so much nostalgia in the game, so much reflection on the past. Baseball, more than any other American institution, thinks about its past, it honors it, it makes comparisons between past and present. People in the game, players. Babe has been dead. He's been dead for 60 years, and yet people still talk about him as if he's alive and know his personality very well. So that's what kind of got me wondering, and not to mention that players are the most superstitious people on earth. I mean, they won't step on the foul line, they wear the same clothes, and really do think about the paranormal a lot in baseball, and attribute a lot of things that happen in the game to the paranormal. So I pitched the idea to a writer and a longtime friend, Mickey Bradley. Mickey's a Yankees fan, and he's named after Mickey Mantle, and so it was kind of ironic that I'd end up working with him. We kind of had different views of the game, but we kind of managed to, we get along because we love the history, and even though he's kind of on the opposite side of the fence, we both love the history. Every year we go to a Yankees-Red Sox tilt, and we just loved talking about that history, and just knew when to bite the tongues when one team was winning and the other wasn't. So it's kind of this joint venture, I think, led to a more interesting book because we were able to combine our knowledge and our own history, and write about the game overall. So we started out with sending out surveys and contacting teams and writing to the Hall of Fame. We went in Cooperstown. We did research there. We wrote to W.P. Kinsella, who wrote the book Shoeless Joe and the movie Field of Dreams. Inspired Field of Dreams, as I mentioned before. And he struck out just about everywhere we went. So we just decided to go down to spring training camp and interviewing players, and ended up interviewing over 800 current and former players and a lot of old timers. We interviewed some Hall of Famers like Jim Palmer and Al Kaline, Yogi Berra, and Willie Mays, and so on. And a lot of current guys like Big Papi and Derek Jeter. And overall, we took over 2 years. We just basically went to every single clubhouse and basically asked players, what ghost stories they had in the game, what they believed, if they believed in baseball gods, if they thought the ghost might influence the game sometime. And we were surprised by the amount of answers and the amount of players that truly did believe that ghosts do occur in the game. As John mentioned, one of the places that's very much mentioned is the Vinoy Hotel in St. Petersburg, and we had players there who talked about one player with the Red Sox this year, John Switzer, in the minor league system, but he was with the Rays last year. He talked about a painting on a wall behind his bed coming to life in the middle of the night. He just heard a scratching noise on the wall, and his wife was with him, and they got up and turned on the lights, and a woman in a Victorian dress with a garden basket had put the garden basket down and was scratching to get out of the painting. And it was one story alone that would be kind of bizarre, but the stories from the Vinoy Hotel are just everywhere in baseball, and of course Ghost Hunters did a story. Actually did a piece on the Vinoy a couple weeks ago, but in baseball, it's just, players are terrified, and a lot of guys would change rooms in the middle of the night. Big Papi didn't even want to talk about it when I mentioned the Vinoy. But guys talk about seeing somebody in their room quite often. They see apparitions. One pitcher talked about someone sitting on his chest in the middle of the night. Guys talk about just hearing a lot of bizarre noises and banging on the walls and doors opening up. A lot of players talk about doors opening up and swear up and down that they bolted the doors and that they opened. And the other hotel the other place that's really mentioned quite often is Yankee Stadium. I'm going to switch ahead here. I'm not good at talking and switching photos at the same time. Yeah, Yankee Stadium is, we got a lot of attention this year because it was the final year of the old ballpark. And, there was some mention of the ghost of Yankee Stadium, but, if you talk to players, it's just like almost universally believe that ghosts are there at Yankee Stadium. And, some players talk about it, just kind of figuratively, like they're there, like the hair will stand up on their neck when they're passing through the tunnels and that sort of thing. But some guys talk about it literally like that. They'll feel the temperature drop, like 20 degrees all of a sudden, and then the wind will start to howl, and something happens in favor of the Yankees. And guys on the Yankees, all believe it. We talked to, Alex Rodriguez. He said that the ghosts give the Yankees the best home field advantage in all of sports. Ricky Henderson, he talked about how the ghosts will come out and influence the games. Dave Winfield, Derek Jeter talked about how the ghosts give the ball an extra push sometimes. And, and it's just not just a feeling of like home field confidence, but a lot of visiting guys as well, especially pitchers and relief pitchers, say that they talk about it all the time when they go into Yankee Stadium. And they'll talk about hearing noises in the clubhouse. They'll talk about walking past the batting cages and actually hearing somebody taking swings in the batting cages when no one's there, and kind of being, really freaked out by that. Sometimes feeling like someone's walking behind them, looking behind them and seeing somebody, and then they, just for a second. And, they think maybe it's the ghost of the Babe or Mickey Mantle or Lou Gehrig. And as Jeff mentioned earlier in his talk, the phenomenon of always wanting to attribute the ghost to the most famous person. But, in general, players definitely do feel that it is those players, maybe because it is like Yankee Stadium is nicknamed the house that Ruth built. But there's also a lot. I'll read some quotes from the book from players about Yankee Stadium. Chipper Jones, who's from the Atlanta Braves, is talking about the 1996 World Series. He said, I don't know if it's Babe, Lou, or whoever, but it's not Derek Jeter coming to bat, but somebody else. Derek Jeter. The Ghost helped out. Maybe they helped push some of our balls over the fence and got us some of the right hops and the right bounces. I'm just going to grab my book. I have several more. Okay, Jason Giambi. I've been involved in some games where everybody thought the game was over, but you're never quite out of it. We get that big hit or that big play, something weird always happens, and before you know it, you have the lead again. David Bell. We didn't have a lot of success there, and I think people attribute it to the guys that have played there in the past. Any ball player is going to think about it. It's kind of the fun part of playing in the historic ballparks. Mike Gallego. It's a friendly thing. The chills are basically of excitement, thinking, wow, Joe DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle, the greats were actually here. When you're here alone, you really feel it. It's like someone taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, remember me? There are many more, like, we interviewed maybe 100 players that quoted about the Ghost in the stadium, but also lots of other ballparks in the game where there are stories. And one of my favorite stories actually involved the Cleveland Indians and their trainer, Jimmy Warfield. Jimmy Warfield was a longtime trainer of the Indians. He was there about 25 years, and he had a brain hemorrhage in the clubhouse in 2002 during the season. It was in the morning, and he was rushed to Cleveland Clinic, and he died in the hospital there. And many people throughout the game of baseball were devastated. He was players were extremely close to him. They kind of, one of the things I definitely learned in this project is that players don't just regard their teammates as, with camaraderie, but they definitely, a lot of people behind the scenes, a lot of people in the clubhouse. We saw it during the celebration when the Red Sox won the division, the pennant, when they were spraying the security, the bullpen was playing the security guard with champagne, and then he was spraying them with a hose. But in general, there's just a lot of camaraderie. But Jimmy Warfield especially was somebody that players seemed to love a lot. And when I interviewed Kenny Lofton, one of the great outfielders in the game, he literally started crying and took him several minutes before I could even talk about it. This was 5 years after Warfield had passed on. So a lot of players mentioned how Warfield would always remember their name and would always go out of their way to try to just understand a little bit about the player. He'd know what high school they went to. He'd call them up if they were still in the minors and ask them how they were doing and that kind of thing. And players always remember that kind of thing. But when he died that afternoon on the field, the seagull showed up, and it kind of hovered really close to where Warfield used to sit on the bench, and it wouldn't go away. And it was kind of scruffy and small, and there were a lot of birds at Jacobs Field, and a lot of people always, they're always like chasing popcorn. But this bird seemed different. Players described it almost like a dove, mixture between a dove and a seagull, and just kind of really scruffy and small, and it wouldn't leave the field. It kind of walked across the field during the game and hovered really close to Jim Tomei, who was really good friends of Warfield. And Tomei kind of seemed to recognize something in the bird and didn't want to shoo it away, and just let it be. And a couple times, Brett was actually there for 5 straight games, and during that whole time, players refused to shoo it away. A couple of times it actually walked on the mound or walked in between a pitch, and it was really bizarre. And